I'm here with Dan Lohrmann, the Field Chief Information Security Officer for Presidio. Dan, thanks so much for taking the time.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
One of the themes that we are hearing today throughout the day at the inaugural StateRAMP Summit is around the value of the program. And that's where I'm going to start, because as both a former state CISO, as a current someone in the industry now, you're seeing kind of that value come together. When you talk to clients, when you talk to other state CISOs, what are they saying about why StateRAMP is more important today than maybe ever before?
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more states that are really seeing the value in StateRAMP, getting involved. It's grown over the last several years. So now it's way more than a third, and it's kind of heading towards 2/3. It's growing in its importance as far as states, CISOs especially, but also the technology offices having to go through so many different compliance testing and so many different ways that they test their risk management programs, having to, for procurements, making sure that they've got the right protections in place. And StateRAMP really provides that for both the vendor side, but also for the government side, kind of one-stop shop to really look at, okay, which vendors are certified, go through the NIST process and really know what the controls are, and then really think about how they can best implement that and not have to reinvent the wheel 100 times, if you will. So more and more states are buying into that, more and more CISOs are buying into that, more and more CIOs are buying into that, really across the country.
The big question is, are more and more program managers, or more and more the business side buying into it? Because I think if just because the CISO says do it, I think, as you know from your experience, it doesn't always happen. Do you see that the business side is having this? It doesn't have to be called StateRAMP, but we need better cyber, we need more cyber, we need smarter cyber.
I think so, in a sense, because a lot of times when you talk about the harmonization's been a big topic the last couple of days. We talk about that, and you think about you already have so many different compliance requirements. So payment card industry, PCI, you've got requirements around Health and Human Services, around CISOs, criminal justice information, so many different others. We could go through a long list, and there was a big chart up in the wall during a recent session. So many different ones. And those are, really to get federal money. In many cases, state and local governments are custodians of federal dollars. So the programs are run locally, but they're federal programs. And so they have to comply with IRS standards. And if they want to process credit cards, they have to comply with PCI standards. So you do see, and now with CISO in Michigan, you do see, many cases, the champions are coming from the business side. So the state treasurer or the people who are department directors saying, it's not an option to not process credit cards when we're renewing driver's licenses, when people are going to campground reservations and those kinds of things. It's not an option to say no. So we will be PCI compliant. So in many cases, not all, but in many cases, those business areas are really champions for making sure you meet with those compliance standards. And then it comes down to a StateRAMP, just adding to that, can you do it as if 70%, 80% of these controls overlap? And is there a way we can have efficiencies and do it with less money and more effectiveness?
You told, if I remember correctly, a really interesting story about your time in Michigan when you had the IRS come in, and then you had somebody else come in.
Yep.
Walk me through that a little bit, and this really is a great example of why harmonization, regulatory, and cybersecurity is so important.
Absolutely. So when I became CISO in Michigan, I'm going back 2 decades now, but I was there for 17 years total. But we had teams coming in, and I was told I had about 30 people on my staff, but the wider CTO staff had about 800 staff, 400 contractors, so a big team of statewide centralized IT. And we had a team from IRS coming in. They needed a place for 30 people to sit. And then we had another team come in for CISOs. We had another team come in, and in many cases, we didn't have room for all these people. So whole teams are like, well, how long are they going to be here? Well, 2 to 3 months in many cases, and sometimes there was overlap. And in one case we had, and so these data centers, and this was pre-FedRAMP, pre-cloud, we had 3, 4, 5 teams coming in, people from across the organization, and literally hundreds of people involved in this. And so it was like, blew my mind, quite frankly, with how much time and energy, not to mention the audits that came in from the state side, so like the legislative audits. So, the ability to see efficiencies, and many times asking the exact same questions, not wanting to see those same questionnaires, saying, well, what you said to the IRS doesn't apply to us. We're a different group, we're CISOs, and so being able to bring that together and be more effective for less money and less time, it just seems like a no-brainer, quite frankly.
And that's what this really is coming down to, both StateRAMP, but more of the broader discussion about harmonization. Wait a minute, if you're asking these 20 questions and I'm asking 20 questions, and of those each 20 questions, 18 of them or 15 of them are the same, why do I need to answer them twice? Because it puts a pressure on a system, it puts a pressure on the people that, do I really have time? I have to, but what's that? What's the opportunity cost? And talk a little bit about the opportunity cost of when folks can use something like StateRAMP, or if we can get towards harmonization in other areas, that's going to give folks back a lot of their time to work on really the high priority risk management type of cyber work.
Yeah, there's a huge value also from the vendor side of the community as well. So I mean, obviously now with Presidio, and so but we work with all the top cybersecurity vendors, the Googles, Microsofts, and on and on and on. But also the CrowdStrikes and Zscaler and Netscope and all of them, and the ability to for states to not have to reassess solutions every time you do an RFP, every time you really want to say, is this product that we're going to be using, cloud-based solution, is that even protected properly? And can we use that? Does it have the controls in place? So the ability for the vendor side as well, to not have to redo that for every state and have different requirements across the board, that's a huge value. For the states themselves, not to have to redo that reinvent the wheel every time an RFP goes out, every time a procurement happens. I mean, I can't give you a number on the percentages, but it's well over 50%, 70%. I mean, it's a huge value, and I think it's just going to snowball and grow. There are some unique requirements that are still going to be there. CJIS, criminal justice information, might be a little bit different than Medicare, Medicaid, or IRS, but I think it's 10, 20%, and 80% of it is the same.
And that's what you heard from Nick Lyerson from the White House regarding harmonization. Hey, what about these enterprise ICT?
Yes.
Hey, we're all using XYZ for this basic security. Can we all just agree that this is the minimum standards for that? Versus, hey, you're a little unique because you're in electric and I'm a little unique because I'm in water. Let's push those to the side. Is that really what you'd like to see from the industry perspective now? Hey, can we get to that 80%?
Absolutely. And it's something that's honestly, following through and actually getting there has been a challenge over the last few years. I mean, I know we talked way back 20 years ago, security is job one. We're going to build it into all the products. We're not there today, and we can do way, way better, much, much better.
Why is this such a hard thing? Is it trust? Is it, hey, yeah, I'll trust Dan, but I'm not going to trust Bill because of just a human nature? What can get us over the hump? I
think it's a couple of different things. I mean, we talk about people, process, and technology. So there is a people aspect to this. There's actually quite a few people. So there is some bureaucracy issues. There is some turf. We're this department, we're that department. So trust and turf and job protection. I think that's part of it. I do think the technology is moving. It's a constantly moving target. So I mean, the challenge of constantly having, we're talking about artificial intelligence today, and we don't want to just solve yesterday's problems and yesterday's issues. And so it's gone from, kind of Wi-Fi issues to bring your own device issues to cloud issues. Now we're talking Gen AI issues. And so it really is a moving target in the sense of technology. But from a compliance perspective, I think the methodology and the processes can be greatly improved. And I think if you kind of think, hey, it's going to be a moving target, but we can do 80-20 from a perspective of a compliance perspective, as far as not having all these different rules people have to comply with, I think we can see huge value in government.
And this ties back to the people side, and let's talk a little bit about that, because we know, and you probably see this now more than ever at Presidio, the workforce challenges.
Yep.
Can we find enough people? Can we hire enough people? Can we train the people to help adjust and mitigate and deal with the cyber risks? If you can get some consensus, then you can make sure that you, maybe not less people, but a different type of person with different skill sets. Talk a little bit about that workforce piece of it.
Absolutely. So there's no doubt, I've seen several recent studies that talk about top of the list of concerns for CISOs nationwide, across industry, but certainly in government, is the issue of a shortage of staffing. And so that can come with not being able to get the cyber talent, the people with the experiences, but it also can come with the challenge of, we have budget reductions, or we have freezes in staff. We may have positions, but we're not hiring right now. Many states and many local governments are already with the economy, maybe not seeing total across the board reductions, but it's certainly staffing freezes. In some cases, there are projections. There are going to be reductions across the board, 4%, that kind of thing in different states. So in that kind of environment where you're talking about do more with less and maybe freezing staff, it really is, it's an imperative that you're more efficient. And having people do just compliance work or just auditing work is very, very difficult for CISOs. So this is probably even more important. I say it's very important to both, but at the state and local level than it is for the federal level.
It's interesting you bring up this idea of the importance of the work, and compliance is important. No one's going to argue with it, but there are better ways. I mean, do you see that just even internally at your own company, how you guys are adding automation or adding new capabilities to make compliance faster, better, cheaper?
Absolutely. Generative AI and new technologies, new tool sets are absolutely making the processes more efficient. You're starting to see advances in how we do innovation, and certainly, we all have seen that at our home with ChatGPT and writing and doing our resumes or whatever it might be. The same thing is true in compliance. Gathering the data, where is the data, who has the control, who has the accesses, tool sets that can look at the enterprise, do risk assessments faster, be much more efficient, and then look across different compliance frameworks and looking at how you can better do cybersecurity from across the enterprise. No doubt about it, we're seeing advancements.
And do you find that clients, state, local clients, federal clients, whomever, come to you or asking, well, how can I implement ChatGPT? How can I use Gen AI better? Is that where's that level of conversation? Is it just kind of dipping the toe in, or people want to jump in with both legs?
Yeah, I think with Gen AI, we're seeing leaders, followers, and laggards. You're seeing all the above. And so there are certainly states that are well down that road. There are some states that are going much faster than others, but certainly we're seeing interest across the board. Bring your own AI is an issue as well, so CISOs are facing that. If you just stop it, then people will bring their own, or they'll use it, or they're working from home many times. Many states are like 2 days a week in person, 3 days a week at home, or 2 and 3, 3 and 2. And so you're seeing that, that issue as well. So, but yeah, absolutely, Gen AI is hot. It's really kind of sucking all the oxygen out of the room. It is the topic that people are talking about for state and local governments.
There's so much, though, concern about it as well. So I imagine that there's a lot of folks, you mentioned the leaders, laggards, and the other one.
Leaders, followers, and laggards.
There you go, leaders, followers. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are still in that laggard stage of watching it from afar about how, okay, what are you doing with it? How's it work? The last couple minutes we have together, Dan, let me just ask, when it comes to StateRAMP, since we are at the inaugural StateRAMP Summit, what do you hope, how do you hope that the program can continue to advance over the next, 6-12 months?
So I'm really hoping and believing that more and more states will actually include these requirements and StateRAMP in their procurements. So in RFPs, in language, requiring it. We heard just in some of the sessions just now, some cases are giving 15 bonus points, or they're giving different types of benefits if you do it, or making it recommended. Some are now mandating it, but more and more will be, kind of move into the leaders, and more states will involve and formally say, we're using StateRAMP as our tool set for all of our procurements, and certainly all of our cloud procurements and data. And so really, I think the adoption rate, the number of states and locals involved is going to grow, and then also seeing more harmonization and more mapping with areas like CGIS. I think that's just going to improve. Hopefully a year from now, we're going to see even more states and more harmonization.
All right, from your your mouth to the ether of the world, and hopefully it can make some change. Dan Lohrmann is the Field Chief Information Security Officer at Presidio. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.